of the cost. And financial aid is used to refer to when they pay based on the salary of your parents.
Yes.
So Harvard has this program that allows you to attend college, and you pay according to how much your parents can pay. I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah.
explain more of that in one of our stops.
Okay. So every building is different, right?
Every building is different, but most of the buildings are the dormitories of the students.
Yes.
And this is, I think, the most beautiful one because this is where I live my first year.
When you live here, it's like free or you need to pay?
It depends on the student. I'll explain how it was.
Oh, before he lived over here, you say?
This is where I lived my first year at Harvard.
Yeah.
Dormitory?
Yeah, these are all dormitories. Most of the buildings are dormitories. Other buildings, as I will explain, have other functions, like there are offices or we have classes in them. But most of them are dormitories.
I like all buildings, sir.
Huh?
I like all buildings. All is cool.
What?
All buildings.
Yeah.
They are all buildings, sir.
Yeah.
I like all buildings. Typical American style.
So we can get over here. Over here. Yeah. Maybe leaving some space for the people who want to pass. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So this is Harvard Yard. This
Yes.
is the heart of Harvard University. This is where most of the first year students live on campus. We have 12 dormitories where you are randomly assigned once you get into Harvard. So you're put with roommates from other parts of the world. In my case, I lived in this dormitory called Matthews Hall. And this Matthews Hall, I lived in the 4th floor with a roommate from Chicago. The way they match students is by academic interest or by sharing an extracurricular activity in common. So at that moment, I wanted to study neuroscience. I wanted to be a scientist or a doctor. And my roommate also wanted to study the same thing. And both of us came from Catholic religious background, and so that is why they put us together. So Harvard University was founded in 1636 by the Massachusetts Bay Colony and with the name of Newtown College, because Cambridge used to be called Newtown. So 2 years after it was founded in 1638, an English minister named John Harvard believed in the mission of this newly established university on this side of the world, and the mission of that university was that they would educate men to become ministers for the church. So believe it or not, Harvard was a religious institution in its beginning. So John Harvard, once he died, he donated half of his money and all of his books to Harvard, and because of that he became the first benefactor of the university, and they changed the name from Newtown College to Harvard College to honor the first benefactor. But because the mission of the university was to educate ministers for the church, only men could become church people at that time, so only men could study at Harvard. So for almost 200 years, only men were admitted into Harvard. In 1879, a women's college was created with the name of Radcliffe College, and it was the counterpart of Harvard, but for women. The same professors taught men here at Harvard, and the same professors taught women at Radcliffe. And Radcliffe is a college that is a couple of blocks from here, super close. During the World War I and World War II period, many students at Harvard had to go to war, and because of that, classrooms become a little empty. And professors decided to join the women and the men classes so that they teach only one. And because of that, Harvard became an integrated community. But it wasn't until the 1970s when Harvard integrated housing. Until that moment, men lived separated from women. And So in the 1970s, Harvard did what's called the Great Experiment, which consisted in that Harvard sent 100 men from the men houses to the women houses, and 100 women from the women houses to the men houses. There was an exchange of people. And because that worked out very well, and people, of course, related to each other very well, Harvard became a co-ed institution. And that cohort of students, for example, was Bill Gates. Later in 1999, finally, this Radcliffe College for Women, which had been integrated slowly to Harvard, finally disappears and becomes an institute for the advanced studies. So it's a research institute where Harvard invites people to come and do research. And starting in the year 2000, men and women received finally diplomas at St. Harvard University altogether. But for the more than 300 years of history of Harvard, we only had male presidents until last decade, where we had our first woman president, and her name was Drew Faust. Drew Faust did two great things while she was a president. The first thing is that she taught the importance of where we come from and how that shapes who we are today. So there was a yellow house we passed by the entrance. That yellow house is that house where presidents of Harvard used to live in the past. President Holyoke and President Wadsworth of Harvard. In 2007, while Drew Faust was president, a history professor found journals written by slaves in that house. So slaves who served these presidents at Harvard. And Drew Faust, in her attempt to inculcate the importance of our past and who we are, she did a ceremony to honor those slaves and to honor the past of Harvard. The second great thing, which is what you were asking me earlier, which is about the scholarships and the financial aid. So as you can imagine, Harvard is very, very expensive. So for you to have a big picture of what Harvard is, Harvard University as a whole is everything. So all the graduate schools, so medical school, law school, design, education, everything, and Harvard College, which is the undergraduate program that I attend after high school. All of that is called Harvard University. Harvard College is only the undergraduate program. Harvard College, to attend 1 year of what I'm doing, your first degree of bachelor's, it costs around $65,000. And that includes tuition, room, board, health insurance, everything. But it's an amount that is very high and many families cannot afford. So this financial aid program, the way it works is that once you are accepted into Harvard, in which you have to present your SAT scores, if you're an international student, your TOEFL exam, extracurricular activities, letters of recommendation, personal essays, all of that in an interview. After you pass all that process and you enter Harvard, they review the financial aid in a separate way. So they see how much do your parents make. If your parents make less than $65,000 per year, which is the cost of Harvard, then you study completely free. But that is only after you get it. Then if your parents make from $65,000 to $150,000, you pay from 0 to 10% of their salary. And if you make more, then you pay proportionate to that salary. So the difference between a scholarship, Harvard doesn't have scholarships, but the difference between a scholarship in other places that is basically on your academic scholarship based on a score, or a sports scholarship that you have to maintain and show the same type of performance throughout the years, and a financial aid is that the financial aid is based on need, on financial need, and it covers everything. So around 55% of all the students at Harvard receive some form of financial aid, and 20% of all of them study for free. And I am one of them. So I come from a very poor town in Chile, in South America. My mom is a cleaner and my dad is a plumber. They didn't go to college. I'm the only one in my family who speaks English, and I went to a public school where I didn't have much English. But with effort and working hard, I was able to get into English debate competitions. I went to the World Debate Championship, and at the same time I was doing some scientific research at a local university that made me see that the world was bigger than my reality where I was living, and I wanted to pursue that. And through a program at the US Embassy, I was able to apply to US university. So around 10 or 11% of all the students in the college are international students, and we have a great support for international students. We have an introductory program 1 week before classes start, and that gives us the welcoming to the United States, how life here works, how to find resources, how to open a bank account, a phone number, and things like that. And we have support from the international office throughout the year with the taxes, with all of those things. But coming back to the yard, not all of the buildings here on the yard have our dormitories. Some of them have different functions. For example, the white one over here, this one is called University Hall, and it was a dining hall for the students, but later it moved to a place where we're gonna go later. Right now, it's only administrative offices where the office of the deans are located. And if you watch this movie, The Social Network, you know that Mark Zuckerberg, who was a student at Harvard, who studied computer science, he created a Facebook for the Harvard students, that later became the Facebook we all know. But at that time, the internet was so slow that he had to face the administration for having shut down the system, and the administration was located over here. So that is where Mark Zuckerberg had to go to face the administration for having created the Facebook. This other building over here is called Massachusetts Hall. This one is the oldest building at Harvard. It was built in 1720, and it's the oldest that is still here. It was a dormitory for 30 students, but during the Revolutionary War, George Washington, whose headquarters were just a couple of blocks from here, asked Harvard to host some soldiers on campus. And they put 300 soldiers alone in this building for a place that was meant for 30. So you can imagine how tight all the soldiers were there. And they took the brass out of the doors and the windows to make bullets, and Harvard didn't like that because they were destroying the property. So as soon as Harvard became as soon as the U.S. became a government, Harvard sued the newly established government for that, and Harvard won. Right now, there are 13 students living on the top floor, and we like to call them lucky students because the first floor is where the president of Harvard works. So there's a myth that says that the president of Harvard handpicked each one of the 13 students who are going to live above him or her to be the most studious and quietest and smartest of all the applicants. However, that is not true because, as I said, we're all randomly assigned any of the dormitories. And the other one across here is called Harvard Hall. This is very interesting and the most important of all because there was a first Harvard Hall built over here, made out of a Caribbean wood, and you can imagine the winters in Boston with a lot of snow, the wood didn't resist, so they had to build a second Harvard Hall over here. The second Harvard Hall is where they put the books that John Harvard donated in 1638. So there was a very important library with the books that originated this university, and that students could only see during the day. But there was one student who was stubborn, and his name was Ephraim Briggs. Ephraim Briggs was taking a class, and he needed to study for his exam, and the book he needed was in the library. But he didn't go during the day to read the book, but he said, okay, if I go at night and I take the book and I take it to my room, I can read it in my room, and in the morning I can return it to the library. The problem was that at that moment there was no electricity, so when he went at night to the library, he left a candle inside the library, and he left. And then the next morning when he comes back to return the book, he sees the president of Harvard standing in front of this building, but the building at that moment was in ashes because all night the building was on fire because we left the candle inside the library. And therefore all of the books that we had of John Harvard were lost. So once he was coming back to the building, he faced a dilemma. Should I run away and hide this book, or should I return it to the president and tell him I did this? So he was honest, like any Harvard student would have done, and he returned the book. And the president said, "Thank you very much," but at the same time, the president of Harvard took Ephraim Briggs to that building and expelled him from Harvard, and so Ephraim never graduated from Harvard. But thanks to his honesty, we have the only book that was saved. And that book is called The Christian Warfare Against the World, the Sin, and the Flesh. It is a religion book, just like the Origins of Harvard, where you could only study religion or philosophy. All right? right now, they built a third one, so they never give up. This is the third Harvard Hall where we have classes right now. But this is a small building where we have classes. The biggest one is called the Science Center, and that is where we're gonna go next. But before we move on, do you have any questions about what I have said? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. So there isn't a so we can walk. There isn't a score requirement for the university. However, you can look online like what are the scores that students have gotten in with. But the difference about other universities in other countries, or especially in my country, where the only requisite was your test score and your school GPA, at Harvard they value the student as a whole. It's a holistic application, so they value your scores, yes, good scores, good GPA, but everything in the context of where you come from. So as I said earlier, I come from a very poor background, from a public school, so they saw my scores. I didn't get perfect scores, but I got very good ones, and they saw that in the context of where I was from. And what they want you to do is to take advantage of all the opportunities available to you. They don't want to require of you to do things that you can't, right? So it's not about comparing yourself with other students who might apply from the US or from other countries who might have access to other resources, other things, but rather what can you do in your community or from your school? What are the options for you? And they want you to have taken advantage of that. Also, this gate is the main entrance of Harvard. There is no sign that says Harvard University. You won't find that to take a picture, so it was very smart of you to take a picture at the entrance where it says Harvard, because there is no place that says Harvard University. I don't know why, but this is the main entrance, and that is because, as I will explain later, it opens the doors to Harvard Yard and to the statue where we're gonna go later. And there is a myth that says that a student can only cross those doors twice in their lifetime. Once when they enter for first year, and once when they graduate and they leave for the world. If not, they're gonna have trouble studying and graduating. But that's just a myth. Also, this is the prettiest season of the year. Like last week, all the leaves were different colors. That's a little wet, but last week was beautiful. Yeah. It's been raining like
Boleh.
twice a week. Yeah. It's been very cold, yeah. Like 1 or 2 degrees, minus 2 degrees. But in the winter it gets like really cold, like minus 16. So I study for free, right? Harvard pays for all my needs, and on top of that they give me a $800 stipend to survive.
That's monthly stipend?
No, it's a semester.
Semester.
Yeah. For a semester to buy books, to pay for, if I want to go out, or for my phone. But supposedly that should cover my flight home.
Yeah.
But it's not that much. So I work on campus, I work at a cafe, and I work at the center there.
I heard from the embassy that students cannot work. They must go to your...
So you cannot work out. You can only work for jobs within the university. Yes. You cannot
from
work.
other private.
Right, you cannot work for the private companies or things like that. Unless it's a summer internship where you apply and you go through a process. But during the semester, it only has to be within the university. Yeah. It can be as a research assistant, it can be at the cafeteria, it could be at the library, anywhere. Yeah. So this place we're at is called the Science Center Plaza. It is a plaza where we have food trucks every day. For those who don't like the dining hall, it's a place in the summer where we can share and we can read a book. Also, there are performances when it's sunny here. And on Tuesdays, like today, we have a farmers market behind you with fresh vegetables from around Massachusetts. And it's called Science Center Plaza because of this building called the Science Center. So you can see at the top we have two observatories, two telescopes there, and this is because here's where the departments of biology, physics, chemistry, mathematics, and some psychology classes take place. So my first year here, I started taking my introduction to biology, introduction to psychology classes, as well as my math year, in huge lecture halls of 400 people. So that was my first approach to Harvard, was to take a class with 400 people. The good thing is that you have a lecture once or twice a week, and then you divide in smaller groups of 20, 25 students to revise and to discuss the material, which is the part that I like the most. But why did I start taking classes here in the sciences when I told you I studied sociology, which is the social sciences, which studies inequality, jobs, immigration, all of that kind of thing. So Harvard that is because Harvard is a liberal arts college. Liberal arts means that they want you to develop in every aspect of life. So it's a holistic curriculum that you have to take classes, at least one in every field of knowledge. So you have to have taken one class in science, in social science, in ethics, in math, in physical sciences, in biology, in history, in language, so that you become a full person by the time you graduate, no matter what you study. And because of that, and because that is very different to how it is to study in college in Chile or in other countries, where you finish high school and you go into one career or one major and you stay on that the whole time, I was able to explore. But so after my first semester at Harvard, I went back home and I worked for a while in an educational nonprofit, which was my other interest that I wanted to see if I really want to pursue that, because I had been a while working in a laboratory. And I really liked that. I fell in love with education, and when I came back the next semester, I realized actually I'm going to take other classes to explore more. And that is something that is very valuable about studying in the United States and studying at Harvard, how it is so free to take classes in all different departments. So I took classes in psychology and now more in sociology. Now that I'm a third-year student, most of my classes are 5 to 10 students. So they are very, very small. We get to know the professor very well, and they become kind of our mentors, and we are their mentees. So it's a really nice relationship with professors, and that is the department where I take classes at. The white building over there is the Department of Psychology, Sociology, Anthropology. So that's like the big part of Harvard, the classes, and you can take whatever classes you want in whatever order you want. Of course, every major or department has its requirements, but you can take them in any order that you want, and you can focus on one specific thing. For example, in sociology, I don't have to take everything about the field, but I can focus on like education and immigration. The other thing about Harvard is the extracurricular activities. So my first semester, I decided not to join anything, so I focused only on studying. But after that, I joined the Harvard University Band. So it's the marching band that every United States university has that plays for the football games, basketball games, and for anniversaries. So I play percussion in the band, And this Saturday, we're going to have the most expected game of all, which is the football game match between Harvard and Yale, because we're rivals, Harvard and Yale. And this year it's going to be special because it's not going to be in our stadium, but it's going to be in Boston at the Fenway Park, which is a baseball location. And it's very, very important. Many concerts happen there. I saw Lady Gaga there, and so it's very important. And the other thing I do during my time is I work. As I said earlier, I work, and with that I get some more money so that I can pay for my trip back home every Christmas. And the thing that we love the most is to eat. That's why we have food trucks here, but also this giant building here, which looks like a Harry Potter castle. And this one is actually our dining hall. Believe it or not, it's a dining hall for the first year students. This is called Annenberg Hall, and it was built in the 1960s as a replica of a dining hall that was located at Oxford University. That dining hall at Oxford was used for the movie Harry Potter as Hogwarts. So this is a replica of Hogwarts. So when students enter, they see the tables, the long tables, they see the lamps and the chandeliers hanging, and a very, very old aspect with old wood inside. Even if it's 50 years old, it looks very old from inside. It's a three-part building. The first part is the dining hall. The second part is a memorial hall where we're gonna go now, and the third part is an amphitheater that I'll explain later. And so with that, we can continue and go into that building. We cannot enter the dining hall, but we can go through the window. Yes. This is the building I like the most at Harvard because it's so Harry Potter. Yeah. I can take a picture. I can take a picture of all of you. Yeah.
Oh, you take picture with me also, eh? So that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe,
Earlier, yeah.
yeah. Can you send to me that?
Yeah, yeah.
The dining hall that we cannot enter
Yeah,
is there.
the one.
It's just like this. So imagine like having dinner like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also just give it an old aspect, colonial aspect that Harvard has. This part is called Memorial Hall, and it is a hall done in memory of the Harvard students who died fighting in the Civil War here in the United States. And around the building, you can see all the names of those students, depending on what school they attended. They went to medical school, law school, divinity school, etc. And the place they died here during the Civil War. On this side of the building is the dining hall, which we cannot enter because it's only it's not open for the public, and even myself, I cannot enter because it's only for the first year students. After you finish your first year in the dormitories we just saw, you would have to choose around 4 or 5 friends you want to live with for the next 3 years. So your second, third, and fourth years on Harvard, you're going to live with these friends, and you enter a lottery as a group, and you're randomly assigned any of the 12 houses that Harvard has. So Harvard has 12 dormitories for your first year, and it has 12 houses for the last 3 years, which are located by the river, and the other houses are located by the Radcliffe Square. So remember the history of the Radcliffe College, where only women could study. Well, those houses are now part of Harvard, and that is one of the houses that I live in right now. On this other side is the Sanders Theater. It is an amphitheater for around 1,000 people, and this is where we have our largest classes on Harvard. These are Introduction to Economics, Micro and Macroeconomics, by the famous professor Gregory Mankiw, who writes all those books, and Introduction to Computer Science by David Malan, or CS50, which is viral on internet. These classes are attended by around 700 to 800 students every lecture. It is also broadcasted online, and of course after that they split in smaller sections for discussion. This place is also part for performances, theatricals, and concerts done by the students. So the orchestras of Harvard play there. And we also have an award every year for a person in the world who has done a humanitarian effort. In the past, when this building was opened in the 60s, we had Martin Luther King Jr. coming here to do a speech. And lately we've had people like Lady Gaga for her work in mental health, Rihanna and Shakira for her work in education. So we as students get free tickets to see these people, and there's a lot of security outside of this building, of course, but this is one of the advantages of Harvard. At the Institute of Politics at the School of Government, the Kennedy School of Government, there are always important people coming. Just a month ago, I was able to see the President of Ecuador and the President of Panama, and I took selfies with them. So those are things that only happen here at Harvard. But the original mission of this amphitheater was not to host classes, but it was a place where students would graduate. So in the 60s, Harvard had around 1,000 students. So they were able to sit there and graduate. But as soon as Harvard started opening for more students and more diverse population, that moved, because right now around 13,000 people graduate, not only from the college, but also from all the graduate schools. And a place called Tercentenary Theater, which is the space between Memorial Church and White Air Library that we're going to go to. Okay? Do you have any questions about this? Or we can continue? Yeah? Okay, awesome.
What is that?
We have the shuttle that takes us to the business school, which is on the other side of the river.
So that goes around the
Yeah. So they all, these are dormitories.
Oh, look at that.
That glass building there with a couple glass, that's the art museum. Yes. So Harvard has 4 museums. Has the art museum over there, has the natural history museum, the anthropology museum, archaeology, and the Semitic museum of ancient Egypt. It's really, I really like it because there are mummies. No, but the coffins. They have the coffins. Harvard was the first institution that went to Egypt, to the pyramids, to do research, and then the money. So that is how we have